All right, so it's time to come clean. A lot of our clients don't actually move to Fort Lauderdale, and I'm gonna tell you why in this video. And some of those reasons may surprise you, some may not, but let's talk about some of those reasons why and where they're actually moving. So yes, this is not clickbait. A lot of our clients don't actually move to Fort Lauderdale. Now you may be confused because my channel is called Living Fort Lauderdale, but the reality is that all of Broward County is considered the Fort Lauderdale metro area. And if you're talking to somebody from Orlando or Tampa or even from another state and they ask you where you live, you're most likely just gonna say Fort Lauderdale. You're not gonna say Cooper City or Davie. Now don't get me wrong, we do still have clients that specifically wanna be in Fort Lauderdale, in these certain neighborhoods, not so much downtown, but within the city limits. And what I've noticed speaking to a lot of you on our discovery call is that you don't necessarily know a lot about the area to begin with. So you just automatically default to Fort Lauderdale. But after we go over your wants and needs in an area, you realize that there's just so much more out there in the metro area than just Fort Lauderdale or the surrounding cities that ultimately is just a better fit for you. So let's get into some of those reasons that our clients are choosing not to move right into Fort Lauderdale, with the first reason being a total lifestyle change. And when I say lifestyle change, I mean the city life versus the suburb life. A lot of the clients that I help personally come from New York and New Jersey, and they want to escape that fast-paced, hustle, bustle, traffic, tourism type of lifestyle. And living in the west suburbs just gives you a little bit more of that peace and tranquility that you're not gonna find in Fort Lauderdale. Now don't get me wrong, these areas still can be congested depending on which specific area you move to, like Coral Springs, for example. It still has a city-like feel, even though it's a suburb. It still can get pretty congested, but there's just a whole different type of vibe and atmosphere out in the suburbs versus the city. And so in Fort Lauderdale, for example, it's a coastal city. You have much easier access to waterways or canals or just anything that will lead you directly to the ocean. And in the suburbs, you do still have water, but it's more in the form of like a man-made lake. But it's more spread out, it's a bit slower, and it's full of communities which can be compared to some neighborhoods in Fort Lauderdale, but these communities are different. First of all, it's very hard to come by a gated community in Fort Lauderdale of single-family homes. I can only think of 3 off the top of my head, which is gonna be Bay Colony, Sea Ranch Lakes, and Harbor Beach. And those are gonna start pretty much in the millions just to begin with. But these gated communities are much more common outside of the city, out in the suburbs, and this is actually really important to a lot of our clients, especially ones with kids. Another thing is amenities, whether it's just a pool, or a clubhouse, a gym, maybe a small lake with a small beach. You don't have to leave your neighborhood to find these types of things. And it just gives you more of a sense of community, especially if you have kids and you're looking to meet other people with kids, or even if you don't have kids and you're just looking to meet other people, you don't have to necessarily leave your neighborhood to do so, as if you were living in an established neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale that doesn't have these types of amenities. In Fort Lauderdale, unless you're living in a condo, you typically don't find this. And even if you just want a pool, you're either gonna have to buy a house that already has one, or you're gonna have to build one. Like I said, in these types of communities, you will most likely have a community pool. Now there are situations which will vary in some of these suburban neighborhoods, like the older neighborhoods, the non-HOA ones, where it is more of a city feel. But for the most part, where our clients are moving, they're choosing these areas with these communities, with these amenities. And one thing that you do have to be aware of if you do want all these amenities is that you're gonna have to be part of a homeowners association. And that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. It just really all depends on how you look at it. And so real quick, before we jump into the next reason, I just wanted to take this time to remind you that I am a realtor here in Florida, And I love making these videos, but I love more to earn your real estate business. So give us a call, text, or email at any time. We'd be happy to hear from you, and we'd love to help you in any way that we can. Okay, so the next reason that people are moving outside of Fort Lauderdale is gonna be the different style of housing. The style of homes are very different in the suburbs compared to the city. Now, like I just mentioned before, if you are moving into one of these older areas in the suburbs, you're gonna find more of that same type of older city style housing, I guess you can call it. The smaller homes, very similar to what you would find in Fort Lauderdale or Pompano Beach or Hollywood. But yes, the styles are different, and if you take a home in Fort Lauderdale that costs $700,000 and then compare it to a home in, let's say, Davie that costs $700,000, you're gonna see a difference. In Fort Lauderdale, you tend to see a lot of smaller single-story homes, bungalows, homes built between the 1950s and 70s, definitely more charming, definitely more character, versus outside of the city, specifically in these areas that we're talking about that are more community focused, where you'll tend to see more homes built in the 80s and 90s, more two-story homes, or even newer than that. But overall, the style is just different. And one of the big factors, a big difference between being out in the suburbs and some of these newer homes versus being in Fort Lauderdale in one of these older homes, is having a garage. It's easier to find a home out in the suburbs with a 2 or 3 car garage versus in Fort Lauderdale or any of the surrounding cities where you may find a 2-car garage, but more than likely you're gonna find a 1-car garage, a carport, or nothing at all. And little details like this make a big difference, especially when it comes to pricing, which brings us to our next reason that people are choosing to move outside of Fort Lauderdale, which is gonna be the cost of living. Now, as far as overall cost of living, like food and gas, you're not gonna see a huge difference, but the main difference you're gonna see is gonna be in the cost of housing. Typically in any metro area, it's pretty safe to say that the closer you live to the downtown area or just the center of the city, the more expensive it is to live there. And I know I've mentioned that pricing is very area or neighborhood specific in this metro area, but for the most part, when you go out into the suburbs, your dollar will stretch further when it comes to the cost of housing. But sometimes it doesn't make sense at all. Like Weston and Parkland, for example, probably the 2 furthest suburbs from the center of the city, from the center of Fort Lauderdale, and probably 2 of the most expensive towns that you can live in. And we'll talk about why in a minute. But let's just take a look at 2 random homes, both priced the same, one in Fort Lauderdale and one outside of Fort Lauderdale. And I mean, you can clearly see the difference. Now, like I said, typically the closer you are to the downtown or center of the city, the more expensive it is to live. But here's the best thing about this. Fort Lauderdale is a small metro area, so no matter where you live, you're really probably only about 45 minutes from downtown or the beach. Some metro areas like Houston, for example, or the New York City metro area, you can still be considered in the Houston metro area and be 2 hours away from downtown Houston, just because of how spread out it is. Luckily for us, a majority of our county is Everglades, so the livable area is very compact and very easy to get around. Now, I said I would tell you why some of those towns like Weston and Parkland, even though they're probably 2 of the furthest towns away from Fort Lauderdale, why they're some of the most expensive. And this is the other reason that a lot of people are choosing to move outside of Fort Lauderdale, and it's gonna be the schools. You just have a much better chance of finding higher rated schools in the western suburbs than you do in Fort Lauderdale or any of the surrounding cities. Now, you can definitely still find good schools in Fort Lauderdale. In fact, Fort Lauderdale has some of the top private schools in the entire county, even in the entire state. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you have a better chance in the suburbs of finding better schools across all grade levels versus in Fort Lauderdale or some of the other cities. You may be in an area that has a good elementary school, but the high school and the middle school are ranked low. And this is just one of those reasons that Weston and Parkland are priced the way they are, even though they're so far away. It's because of the schools. So now let's talk about where these people are actually moving to. Well, a lot of the clients that we help or have helped in the past, if I could boil it down to the top 3 areas, it's probably gonna be Coral Springs, Davie, and Cooper City. And Coral Springs, you kind of get the best of both worlds because it's technically a city. I mean, it kind of looks like a city. There's no high rises or anything like that, but it's a very busy area, but it's also very suburban at the same time. The school ratings in Coral Springs aren't necessarily the best, but the reason that a lot of our clients have chosen to move there is really just because of the diversity of housing and the diversity of pricing. You can still find homes in Coral Springs in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, like right in the center of town. Or maybe you want a more charming home that was built in the 80s on a tree-lined street with mature trees, the home that has a little bit more character, and you can spend somewhere from $600,000 to $700,000. Or maybe you want to go full suburban and be in a gated community and spend $800,000 to $1 million. And the good thing about Coral Springs is you don't typically see a lot of homes priced over $1 million. And the next town is going to be Cooper City, and I've actually not done a video on Cooper City yet, which will be coming soon. But the main reason that a lot of our clients have chosen to move there is basically because of the schools. I think they're ranked number 3 in all of Broward County for schools. I may have to double check that. It's either 3 or 4. I may have to cut this out. And then another reason is the same as Coral Springs, the variety of homes to choose from. And Cooper City was also actually voted as one of the friendliest places to live in all of Broward County. It definitely has more of that small town rural feel, and the atmosphere is just different. A lot of our clients love living there. If you read any reviews online, you'll see that a lot of people say that so many people are just very friendly in that town. And then the last town is gonna be Davie, which is much like Coral Springs. It's a big city. I mean, it's almost the size of Fort Lauderdale, but it's still a suburb. The location is great, being that it's just west of Fort Lauderdale, right down 595. It's close to the airport, close to downtown, close to the Hard Rock Casino. It has good schools, and it also has a wide variety of housing. And one of the coolest things, in my opinion, about Davie is that it almost doesn't feel like you're living in South Florida when you're there. Some parts of the town have this like wild, wild west feel to it, while some other parts of the town are a complete college town because you have the South Florida Education Center, and there's a ton of colleges there. Other parts of the town, there's a lot of nature. You can find homes with land. So Davie really has a lot to offer. And if I honestly, out of those top 3, if I had to pick probably the top 1, it's gonna be Davie. And I actually did a whole video on Davie breaking everything down, so I'm gonna link that up there. Feel free to check that out. But this video is not me trying to talk you out of moving to Fort Lauderdale if that's really what your heart's set on. It was just an honest, transparent review, I guess you can say, of what we've been noticing from our clients as of lately. Maybe you really don't care about any of the stuff I just mentioned and you're like, just get me near the water, just get me near the beach. And that's completely fine. And that's why we're here to help you to figure this all out. So if you got value from this video, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see what we can do to help you buy your next home here in South Florida and help you pick the right area, see if Fort Lauderdale really is the best area for you, or if maybe there is something else out there for you. As always, I appreciate you watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one.